Songwriters for hip-hop, raga, soca, dancehall, etc. highly value punchlines. But some don't understand what makes a good punchline, so their attempts fall flat. There's a gap between you and your favorite puncher, and you don't know how to bridge it. Now, I have analyzed hundreds of verses and I've written many of my own. I have developed for myself a perspective of punchlines that I've never heard anywhere else. I will prove it to you by analyzing some material from others, some of my own material, and also material from the Bible itself. By the end of the show, you'll know the formula that once followed will make sure that every punch lands. Let's go.
Let me bless the studio. Fix up the microphone. Check 1, 2, 3, go. Sure. This is Udo Ibeleme, your host, and welcome to the show.
Preach Jesus.
Now, first thing I want to do is discuss the issue that you're going to get if you listen to mostly anyone else on this punchline issue, right? And it's an issue that I think is well analyzed in a particular children's book. I'm married. I've been married for the better part of 10 years. We have children and we have children's books. One of those books is 7 Blind Mice by Ed Young, and it illustrates the issue, and we'll explain how in a little bit. All right? So there are 7 blind mice and they find something very strange, but each of them has a different description of what they found. One of them thought what they found was a wall. Another one thought it was a rope. Another one thought it was a snake. Another one thought it was a pillar. Another one thought it was a fan. And another one thought it was a spear, right? And then the 7th mouse decided to do a thorough check of everything, and he realized that it was an elephant with the body of a wall, a tail like a rope, a trunk that's like a snake, legs like pillars, ears like a fan, and tusks like spears, right? So what happened here is that each of those blind mice encountered a different part of the elephant and formed his own conclusion based on their evidence of piece of what they found. They didn't have all of the information, they just had piece. And so they said, well, this whole thing is this part that I felt. Right? It's a fallacy. What is true of this part is true of the whole. But of course, they didn't know that they had part. They felt like they had that thing. You understand? A lot of times when people talk about punchlines in particular, punchlines for songwriting, they sound like blind mice. Here's why I say that. Because as much as you might be able to identify that a punchline has a simile in it, or a metaphor in it, or a double entendre in it, that's not what makes the punchline what it is. We use those devices in our speech every day, and no one is wowed by that. That's not what the punchline actually is. All right? So what they have the tail of the elephant, another person has the fan, another person has the leg, another person has the trunk, and they're all saying, well, okay, this is a good way to get a punchline. This is a good way to get an elephant. You need to have a tail like a rope. If you get a rope, then you have an elephant. Someone else is saying, well, you know, if you get a trunk, then you have an elephant. And I'm here to tell you that that is a very, very small way to look at what a punchline is. I think that I can distill it to a formula. And this formula is not an equation. We're not going to use an equal sign. We're going to use a greater sign. All right? So the formula here for a punchline, this type of punchline, right, is that the product of multiple devices, whether literary or rhetorical, the product of multiple devices must exceed expectations. All right? So that's what is going to make the punchline. All right? You have to stack up devices, more than one, all right? And when you put all of that together, it must be in a tight little package that wows you, that exceeds your expectations. And when you get that, then you have a punchline, not before. A simile alone is not going to do it. And if you interact with someone else who wants to tell you what a punchline is, and they tell you, hey, look at this particular punchline, this is using a simile to create a punchline, and I would be like, no, they're not seeing what else is there. You must have more than one, or else it's just a device. It's just a device, all right? This, again, punchlines, you find them in you find them in songs. You also find them of necessity in jokes, right? In comedy. You understand? It's the same thing. You're putting together different literary and rhetorical devices to delight those who are listening to you. All right? It must exceed certain expectations, right? And there are other stuff that apply to comedy. There are different theories of what makes comedy work in terms of the benign violation and different other theories. But let's focus on songwriting, right? The product of multiple literary or rhetorical devices must exceed the expectations of the audience, all right? Let's start with the generic formula. Generally speaking, this is the type of punchline that you'll find, right? It's not the only kind, but it's the most common kind. Just like if you're looking at music, most songs are composed in common time, which is 4 beats to the bar, all right? And the other time signatures are less common, okay? So you would find less songs that are 3 beats to the bar, much less that are 5 or 7. You understand? You might find some that are 6 or 9 or 12, right? Compound time. But 4 beats to the bar, that's the common time signature. For punchlines, this is the common type of punchline, is where you take a device of comparison and a double meaning and you put them together. And then, of course, that must exceed expectations, right? But together, comparison and double meaning, all right? Why do I say comparison? Because I think we need to come away from saying things like simile and metaphor. Why? Is it wrong to say simile and metaphor? No, it's not. It's not wrong at all. But if you expand to comparison, then you can see the possibilities of what you can say. A simile is just saying A is like B. It's an overt comparison. That's all it is. You're just comparing A to B. A is approximately B in whatever form, right? It's an overt comparison. And you can see it when it's used via the words like or as. You understand? Those tend to signify that, okay, this is a simile, right? It's an overt comparison, all right? I think Muhammad Ali used to say, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Funny that we're talking about punchlines, right? But float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, those are similes, all right? But then when you have a metaphor, right? A metaphor is a comparison, yes, but it's a covert comparison. Instead of saying that A is like B, you say that A is B, right? So that's all you're doing. You mean to compare A to B, but you speak as though they are the same. So when someone says, I am a warrior, right? And they're not literally a warrior. They're not a soldier or fighter of any kind, like a literal fighter, right? What they actually mean to say is, I am like a warrior in this way, but that's not what they actually say. They just say, I am a warrior, right? So a metaphor is saying that A is B. Simile is saying A is like B. But even if you don't have names for these other devices, you can say that A is more than B. A is less than B. A is not B. These are all ways of comparing or even contrasting one thing to another. You can say that this is more than that. This is less than that. This is not that. These are also ways of comparing, all right? Those are devices of comparison, all right? Another thing is double meaning. Now, the double meaning can be one word. We tend to call those puns when one word is used in multiple forms at the same time, okay? One word is used with multiple meanings, or you can do multiple words. So you have a phrase that means more than one thing at the same time, right? So these are all ways in which you can have a double meaning, all right? And sometimes you have a word that spells, you can get creative with this. You can have a word that spells differently but sounds the same, and you say one thing, you make one sound, but you mean two different words that spell two different ways, right? That counts inside of there. Maybe you can spell a word, whereas the word itself has one meaning, but the spelling of the word is going to now mean two different things, where the spelling can mean, well, okay, I'm spelling this word, but the letters, when you sound the letters out, they sound like a phrase. The sounds that the letters make when you call the names of the letters and you put them together in that sense, they sound like, each of them sounds like words, and you put them together, they sound like a phrase that means something different from the word that you're spelling. That's another way of doing a double meaning. These are all creative ways of achieving the same result. So, generally speaking, people use devices of comparison and double meaning. You stack them together and you use them to create a punchline, all right? My first example, right, is going to come from the scripture. I've spoken about this one before on social media. I'm going to do it here now, let it be immortalized in long form. Psalm 42, verse 1. This one comes from the sons of Korah, and it reads, this is the English Standard Version. As a deer pants for flowing streams, so pants my soul for you, O God. All right? So we have here device of comparison, the simile, right? A deer panting for flowing streams is being compared to the psalmist's soul desiring God. All right? So that's your comparison there. That's your comparison there. And what do you have? You have the word as. That signifies that it's an overt comparison. You can read that and see that it's an overt comparison. Where's the other device there? Well, this one requires you to discern speech, right? This Bible that I'm reading here, this is the English Standard Version. This is one of the many English translations of the biblical material that we have. The Bible was originally written in Greek, a little bit in Aramaic, and this particular psalm in Hebrew. The word that is translated as soul is nephesh, and that word literally means throat. So think of a Hebrew mind reading this. What are they hearing? They're hearing the comparison in their head, the deer panting for flowing streams, the psalmist's soul is desiring God. But they're also hearing that soul. Soul there, as we use it, it has to do with your life, your everything, who you truly are, right? But that word also means throat. That nephesh word, it also means throat. So they are hearing a double meaning that we don't hear when we read the English. All right? This is a centuries old example of the generic punchlines that we hear, the common type of punchline that we hear in rap songs all over the place. All right? So this is it. It's right there in the scriptures. Really obviously right there. All right? So that's a really cool one. I always love to go back to that one. Let's go to a modern example, probably not too modern. This is probably over a decade old now, but when people talk about punchlines, sometimes this is one of the ones that is referenced. I don't think it's the best punchline in the world. You can probably analyze it to a point that it doesn't make sense. So it does have a flaw in that sense, but I think that type of flaw tends to come up when you're dealing with someone who does not write, who just punches in. You understand? And we could talk about that another time, but this material here that I will share with you comes from Dwayne Carter, also called Lil Wayne, right? And he says in his song 6 Foot 7 Foot, he says, real G's move in silence like lasagna. Okay? Now, what is the point of what he's saying? He's talking about G. G is a short way of saying gangster. Real gangsters move in silence. So you're operating, you have covert operations. You don't want anyone, especially your enemies or even the authorities, to know what you're doing. So you move in silence. You move with stealth as much as possible, right? Like lasagna. Does lasagna move in silence? Does lasagna move? So this is a comparison here. We have the simile. Real G's move in silence like lasagna, right? But lasagna doesn't move. Here's the double meaning here. The double meaning is in the word G's. G's is short for gangsters, but G is also being used here as a double meaning for the actual letter G, right? And in the word lasagna, there's a G there, but there's no G sound in the word lasagna. And so that's where you get that punchline from. You have the comparison and the double meaning stacked on each other, and when you hear it, it wows you. All right, so that's how you put that together. That's how he put that together. It can be argued that this is a little bit weak because the G and the N together make the N and the Y sound in this word, right? So the G is sort of making a sound together with the N, but let's leave Lil Wayne alone. This is a well-known example of that sort of thing, right? Without analyzing it too much, all right? recently, I, on social media, decided of my own accord to do a version of a song called, what was it called? It was called World Boss, right? And this song was by a young man by the name of, who goes by the name of O to the R, O to the R, right? And his name is Darthana Burrell. He goes by the name O to the R, and he collaborated on this song with Nicholas Eccleston, who goes by the name DJ Nicholas. All right. At the end of his verse in this song, he says, and this is in Jamaican patois, he says, God above all, everything else is clearly a denominator. All right. So again, that is God above all, everything else is clearly a denominator. Right. So what do we have? We have here, God is not like everyone else. That's the comparison. It's a contrast, actually. All right. So God is not like everything else. What is the name of that device? I don't know, but it's a device of comparison, or in this case, contrast. God is not like everything else. Okay? God is above all, and everything else is a denominator. All right? Now, denominator is what reveals the phrase above all to have two different meanings. All right? So you have the contrast, but now you have the double meaning in above all. God being above all has to do with his position in Otedia's song as the world boss. He's the boss of the world. Okay? That's his position. But now we also have mathematical expression. This is the second meaning. A mathematical expression where God is the numerator and everything else is the denominator. All right? And there's a vinculum in between, if that's the proper word to say. Right. So you have a mathematical expression there in above all, being a numerator. DJ Nicholas actually starts his verse after this by saying, God at the numerator. That means say him the panta. Right. So again, the double meaning as well as the comparison. They're stuck together. Not one device, two. All right. I did something based on Hazakim's song from their album Theophanies. They had a song called Uncut and Raw, and I did something based on their song where I just took the beats and I went with their topic, everything, their subject, and continued with it. All right. And I said, and I'm talking about my own songwriting here, right? That's what I'm saying. Real deep thought when I pen in it for Jehovah, a generous organ donor, put my heart and my soul in it. All right. So now this is what I have here. The same type of punchline here where you have the device of comparison and the double meaning. What's the comparison? The comparison is, I said that I'm a generous organ donor. That's a metaphor, right? I said that I'm a generous organ donor, but I meant that I'm like a generous organ donor. So that's a metaphor, all right? And then I said, put my heart and my soul in it. By the time you finish hearing the bar, you hear the double meaning in the word heart, right? Because when someone talks about their heart, it's similar to soul in a sense. You're talking about your emotions and your will and all of those things, right? But then heart can also mean this organ on the left side of my chest that pumps blood, right? So that's a double meaning there, all right? there you have it again. You have the comparison and the double meaning stacked on each other. All right? Not one device, two. All right? But that's not the only type of punchline that there is. Right? Sometimes within rap circles, you might hear someone say schemes. All right? Now, schemes, the better way to say it for everyone to understand would be word association. All right? And that's when you make multiple allusions to one subject, each of which is also a double meaning. So that's what you're stacking. You're stacking allusions to one subject, each of which is a double meaning. So each one of them is two different things. All right? Allusion, each of them is a double meaning, and then you have another double meaning, then you have another double meaning, and you put all of those double meanings, you're stacking many double meanings together to create an allusion to one subject, right? So you're stacking double meanings here. That's what you're doing. You're stacking double meanings. I saw a clip online from a rap battle between fairly popular battlers, one named Rum Nitty, another one named Hollow the Don. All right? Rum Nitty was talking about something that did happen to Hollow the Don. He was fighting with somebody else, and that person beat him up, threw him in a mirror, all of those things. And when that happens to somebody within battle rap, it can become a subject, and you'll hear it in every battle going forward. That's just how it is. So this is Rum Nitty's version of dealing with that particular thing. Before he said something about they put feet and hands on you. Then he says, the way he got beat, it was bad. Remember the time they put that man in the mirror? Right? So this is, now Rum Nitty, he does punchlines all the time. He's made it a style, right? Very dopamine heavy writing that he does, all right? So here he has 4 different double meanings, right? One meaning has to do, well, just fits in as words in his line about his opponent getting beat up. And the other meaning of each of those functions as references to the catalog of Michael Jackson. So he says what? The way he got beat, it was bad. Remember the time they put that man in the mirror. Beat it, bad. Remember the time, man in the mirror. Right? So those are the double meanings that he stacked together, about 4 of them. Right? And it comes together to create powerful material. All right? Another battle rapper by the name of New Jersey Twerk, if you want to get into punchlines, that's basically what these guys do all the time. If you want to see two places where you're going to hear punchlines all the time, that would be battle rap and stand-up comedy, right? If these people don't punch, they're not doing what they're supposed to do, right? So New Jersey Twerk, he's battling this other guy who he's accusing of being an informant. Basically, you're breaking the rule of being in illegal stuff that you claim to be in, right? Which is you don't snitch on your co-conspirators, right? Your co-defendants. You don't snitch on your co-defendants. So he basically he sets up a scene where he tells everyone that his opponent, who goes by the name Kid Slade, he tells everyone that Kid Slade told everyone that he was weaving the questions that they were asking him. And then they showed him surveillance footage, incriminating surveillance footage of himself, and then asked him if he would like to make a statement. And then New Jersey Twerk's next line is, they told you, watch this. Then you sat at that tiny desk and told them, these are my confessions. Now, again, this is the same word association. You're stacking a bunch of double meanings, right? And these all refer to Usher, the artist Usher's tiny desk performance, in which he sings his song Confessions, the main lyric of which would be, these are my confessions. And while he's singing that song, he makes a gesture with his index and middle fingers of each hand, bringing them over his eyes and crossing them like this. And he says, watch this, right? So he uses that because Kid Slade had used the watch this in some other battle material. So New Jersey uses this on him, and he says, these detectives, they told you, watch this, and then you sat at that tiny desk and told them, these are my confessions. So watch this, tiny desk, and these are my confessions. These are the double meanings that are being stacked on each other. And that creates a scheme, a word association, all right? And again, there's multiple devices being stacked on each other, right? That together form an allusion to that particular thing, all right? I did something similar. I was in a rap battle, my one rap battle. I'd love to do it again. It was fun. My opponent's name was Bus Mass, right? And the way his battle rap persona, at least my, the way how I understood it from looking at his battles in preparation to battle him, write my material, all of those things. I had like about 2 weeks or so. I told him, I felt like as though he portrayed himself as this very, very evil character. And so I said, they say, boss mass, evil, bad, devilish, grim, hot. I come to show you how I at level C is not. We not alike. So after the fact, them had a binge watch clips of me giving this rap devil a kill shot, right? So these are, again, double meanings that I'm stacking. I'm stacking a lot of double meanings here, and it's all an allusion to the conflict, the ongoing rap feud that was going on at that point between Machine Gun Kelly and Eminem. Not alike was Eminem's diss to Machine Gun Kelly. Binge was the name of the project that MGK dropped after the whole thing finished. Rap Devil was the diss song that MGK did after Not Alike to Eminem, and then Kill Shot was Eminem's response. So I stacked those up. Not Alike, Binge, Rap Devil, Kill Shot, and that became a scheme or a word association. Again, not one device, multiple devices stacked on each other. All right. A lot of these that I've shared with you don't make sense without context, right? And both in rap and dancehall and all of those things, as well as comedy, there's material that's called setup, all right? And so in these art forms, in particular battling and comedy, you don't want to have filler. Filler is material that does nothing, all right? Setup is material that provides context for the punchline. Without the setup, the punchline can't be fully appreciated. And so it's not part of the punchline, but it helps, you understand? So sometimes the punchline is one particular thing, or it might be 2 lines long. The setup, though, and the background and all of those things help to make the punchline even make sense, or else it's just like, okay, why did you do this? Okay, it sounds cool, but why did you do this? You understand? So the setup is the context that makes the punchline be fully appreciated. I don't want to just focus on one side of the inequality that I gave you guys, which is that the product of multiple devices should be greater than the expectations of your audience. All right? Let's focus on that other side, greater than the expectation of your audience. Mike Tyson is often quoted as saying, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. The actual quote, I had to dig up for it. The actual quote was, everybody has a plan until they get hit the first time. All right? And that has to do with, it was in the context of him answering questions with regard to an opponent that he was going to fight. And this opponent was saying that he's prepared and has been preparing for Tyson and that he has a plan to deal with him. And that was Mike Tyson's response. Everybody has a plan until they get hit the first time. All right? So that's also what would make you get hit. If you see a punch coming, a literal punch, if someone telegraphs too much, you might be able to block the punch or weave the shot and then respond, right? So the element of surprise, is important to punches actually landing and doing damage, all right? If it has been said before, or if it's too intuitive, it will not work. It has to exceed the expectations. All right, so that's the important thing. You can put those things together and it still wouldn't work. So you say something like, I'm so sick, I need a doctor. I just made this up, right? I'm so sick, I need a doctor. Does it have the ingredients on one side? Yes, it does. I'm so sick, right? That's hyperbole, all right? That's hyperbole. We're going to exaggerate, all right? And sick there is being used in two different senses, all right? Sick as in literally sick, I need a doctor, but also sick as in metaphorically sick, talking about how crazy whatever my skill is, how crazy it is, right? Or how crazy my mind is, right? I'm so sick, I need a doctor, right? You say that and no one is like, oh, no one is impressed with that because it does not exceed expectations. In fact, it falls below them, right? I did one of these before, and I think that it sort of sounded cool, maybe because of my accent and all of what was going on before, right? But as far as I'm concerned, this lacks the element of surprise to me. I said, I keep bringing the fire till they call in the station, right? Again, fire has two meanings, right? I keep bringing the fire till, that's, again, a sort of hyperbolic language as well. Exaggeration, and then fire is a double meaning. I've stacked two things there, right? Fire is, I'm talking about how good my lyrics are, but at the same time, I've used it to talk about literal fire. That has become so much that they have to call the fire station, right? So that is, that to me, I felt like as though, okay, someone else could have said that, and it doesn't exceed expectations, in that sense, right? But before that, 2 lines before that, I said, check the flow is all Trinidadian with so much lyrical weight, they calling it patience. Now that is a punchline. What did I do? Same thing. You have the same sort of hyperbolic exaggeration language, right? But then you have the double meaning, right? I'm using one sound with 2 different spellings, so 2 different words, right? The sound wait, wait, right? But you can spell that W-E-I-G-H-T, right? Which in this sense I'm using to talk about the gravity of what I'm saying, right? The weight of my lyrics, how heavy my lyrics are, but then WAIT, right? Which is where I could come afterwards and say they're calling it patience, right? So that to me, I felt was a punchline that really worked. It exceeded expectations. It will hit you and you'll be like, okay, I got hit in the face. You understand? So it's important that your punchlines have the element of surprise in them, or else they're not good punchlines, right? Sometimes telegraphing doesn't matter, and that is if you've dazed them too much, right? So this is again going with the boxing analogy, right? You've been hitting someone so much that they are too disoriented to see your telegraphing, right? And or for it to matter, you'll still be able to land the last overhand. And even Romnity, the same battle rapper, he has done this thing where everyone knows that he does punchlines all the time. That's his style. And so he would do 4 of them in a row. But what he would do is he would do 3, as far as he's concerned, regular punchlines, which all of his punchlines are heavy. So they might be regular for him, but for everyone else, just like, wow, right? So you would do 3 punchlines that are at a level 75, 80, and then he will overdo the last one. And he usually calls that jab, 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 overhand, right? So again, when someone is dazed, you could do that sort of thing. You can telegraph a little bit, you understand? But of course, generally you want to exceed expectations. My favorite material in terms of this whole thing, I would have to give you guys the setup, because again, this is the type of thing where it's a slow build, where every line becomes a punch that builds on the lines before. And so everything continues to get stronger and stronger and stronger, because each line has one thing and the next line has another thing. So you're stacking the devices not in one line, but in multiple lines. So the punchline just takes all of those, the final punchline takes all of those and squashes them together. And my favorite way of doing that is with homophonic phrases, right? When I say a phrase that sounds phone the same, homo, right? So a homophone just means same sound. So at the end of my battle with Busmass, I used a homophonic phrase, and I love it because I feel like the material was strong, but also because I felt like I was able to say a phrase like that as a Christian on that type of what we would consider to be a secular stage, and have them react the way they did to it. And to me, all praise and glory be to God. But what I believe I said was, you could try all you want. It have nobody like Jesus. You could jump high and low, still nobody like Jesus. When he come back and I change, you go be like, no, but he like Jesus. That's because he's my friend, and it have nobody like Jesus. Choose wisely. Love him or hate him, because nobody like Jesus. He is not no God. Don't ever feel this nobody like Jesus. And in this battle he gave, beat till he resemble nobody like Jesus. Cut him up in small pieces. Or they ain't go find nobody like Jesus. So I really love that. I love being able to say nobody like Jesus so much times. That was awesome for me. But also coming down to the end, I put in some other things as well. So nobody like Jesus is a phrase that I'm using. That's my homophonic phrase. But towards the end, I also stick in some similes, right? So you get beat till you resemble nobody like Jesus, right? So I'm sticking the simile on top of the homophone that's there, so it becomes a little stronger, right? Jesus was beaten until he was unrecognizable as a man. That's what the Bible tells us. And then going forward, of course, the resurrection. Cut them up in small pieces. Orlean will find nobody like Jesus, right? So again, that's a simile. You wouldn't be able to find anybody after I metaphorically cut my opponent up in the same way that they weren't able to find Jesus's body because it wasn't there, because he had been resurrected and left the grave, right? So yeah, that's my favorite material as far as that is concerned, because it's not just the line, the setup sort of builds, but it also kind of telegraphs, but just the way how I break up the words coming down to the end still gives you a little bit of the element of surprise that exceeds expectations. So again, you want to have multiple devices that you're stacking onto each other. It is the product of multiple devices that must exceed expectations, and that's how you get your punchline, all right? But it becomes a neat trick that makes you forgettable if that's all that you have to offer as a songwriter. You understand? It's important for you to understand that you're not the only puncher in the world. You're not the only person who can do that in the world. What makes you different? The main thing that should make you different is what you have to say, right? You should be saying something. And sometimes, especially in hip hop, dancehall, all of those things, you have a lot of songs that are saying nothing, but people are just punching, right? You're going to wow somebody today and they're going to forget it tomorrow, right? You have to have something to say, all right? And what I would like to do is to encourage you to think about what you're writing and not just think about this particular facet of it and making that your entire, you're in all of what you have to offer. You understand? What do you have to say? You understand? And one thing that I would encourage you to do is planning out a song so that you can have everything that you need in terms of your idea worked out before you even start writing the song. And then you can fill it in with rhyme and rhythm and punches. You can fill it in with all of those stuff, but let it make sense at the end of it. I hope that this was helpful, enlightening, informative for you. And I hope that you'll be able to hear Punchline and appreciate it for all of what it is, not just the sum of its parts, not just one part, and even not just all of the parts together. Be able to appreciate the effect that it gives, all right? And that will also help you in your own crafting of your own punchlines, right? So hopefully this has been helpful to you. One more thing to say. Praise Jesus.
You made it through the whole episode, the show done. Hope you get some positive in the nucleus, you know, a proton. Anyhow, you know the slogan.
Preach Jesus.